Hello again. Thank you for joining us this afternoon here on ENCA DSTV channel 403. Now, rising fuel prices will not only affect road users. Air travellers will also fork out more. The temporary grounding of Comair last week, for example, has shown just how much ticket fares can increase, with one-way flights from Joburg to Cape Town selling for up to 5,000 rand. Yeah? One way, 5,000 rand. Now, experts say jet fuel has risen by more than 50% since the start of the Ukraine war. For more discussion, I'm joined by the MD of Plain Talking, Linden Birns. Linden, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. A broad question first. The anticipated increase in ticket prices, is that avoidable or inevitable?
And unavoidable at the end of the day. You know, if you look at the input costs to airlines and how they've been managing to try and contain those costs and keep them under pressure, despite everything that's happened in the last 2 years of the pandemic, and we're all well versed in the impact that's had on travel and the tourism sector. You know, to now be facing this this pressure coming on oil prices and the ripple effects throughout the economy on other input costs that are going to come as a result of that. You know, it's going to result in higher wage demands. It's going to result in higher costs for things like food and beverages and all of the other elements across the entire supply chain. So I do think it's inevitable, and I do think you know, it is bound to happen. What we don't know is by how much it's going to happen. But I think we do need to brace for that.
Yes.
And I think if I can just put it in context, you know, we've had just this year, if we look at the increase of the fuel price just this year, the jet fuel price, we've added over $86 billion to the impact of the industry's fuel bill. You know, and if I just look at, I was just, while I was waiting to come on air, just quickly checking the latest fuel prices for South Africa. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate, you know, a typical Boeing 737, a 180-seater aircraft that typically flies Joburg, Cape Town, or Joburg, Durban. That aircraft's got a fuel capacity of about 40 tons of jet fuel. And at the moment, jet fuel here is costing us $965 a ton. So you're looking at close to 580,000 rand just to put enough fuel in to fly the aeroplane to Cape Town and back. Then you've still got to add all your other costs to that, and then try and recoup some sort of margin to make it financially sustainable. Otherwise, we go down the same route that we ended up with, you know, with South African Airways before.
Yeah, I mean, and these airlines and South Africa as a country, we buy this fuel directly from those who produce it, because we don't produce it. We import it directly, and we have to pay it in dollars, and it will be subject to fluctuations, which will cause a lot of headaches as the prices go up.
Of course. And, you know, we used to produce fuel, but none of the refineries in the country are currently operating. So like all the other fuel, it has to be imported. And as you quite rightly pointed out, that, you know, that puts us, makes us very vulnerable to the vagaries of exchange rates and landed shipping costs and all sorts of additional variables, if you like.
Yeah. Now, Linden,
so I think.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you in there. I mean, the war is still going on, and we don't see an end at this stage. We're still importing that. As you said, we should brace ourselves. It's just a question, we don't know by how much and when. But if you look ahead, you took a medium-term view, we should actually brace ourselves for higher ticket prices for quite some time, shouldn't we?
Look, it's very difficult to say. You know, when we went into the COVID pandemic, one of the first things that happened was the price of fuel just fell through the floor, and we got to the ridiculous and surreal situation where, you know, people were paying, well, suppliers were paying people to take the fuel away. They couldn't get rid of it fast enough. And then we suddenly had this complete reversal. So who knows, you know, please God, there'll be some sort of resolution and peace in Ukraine, and things will calm down and there'll be common sense. But what I did want to just touch on, if you don't mind, you mentioned in your introduction that, you know, we saw the sudden surge in airfares. We actually didn't see a surge in airfares. What we saw was demand having been taken up in the market last week and still is. And suddenly there's 40% of the market no longer being available because one operator being grounded. And what we were left with then was all of the available seats had been taken up, the cheap seats had been taken, and those that were still remaining were stacked up incredibly fast. And all that we were left with were the more expensive options. So it wasn't that the fares suddenly went up, it was just that what consumers were presented with when they went online to try and book were with those remaining fares. And it was akin to, you know, if you went into a car dealership and you said, look, I want to buy a car, and you were hoping to buy a Polo Vivo, and the salesman said, look, I'm terribly sorry, we're sold out of those. And the factory's not making any more at the moment. So all I can sell you is a Jetta or a tow rack. It doesn't mean the prices have gone up. It's just that what's available is no at those prices.
Yes, no, it makes perfect sense, but the jet fuel prices are likely to impact the ticket prices going forward. We need to brace ourselves for that. Thank you very much for clarifying, Linden Birns from Plain Talking.